There's been a lot of hype going on for many years now. There's been a lot of money invested. I think according to latest statistics, it's around 10 billion invested into blockchain projects last year. 65% roughly of CEOs, according to Deloitte, rank blockchain among their top 5 strategic priorities. In many other projects, blockchain is just forced onto it, sometimes as an investment vehicle, sometimes as a reputational tool, but not really with a long-term strategy.
Our first speaker is Ilya Kleiner, who is Executive Director of the London Blockchain Lab. Could you please share the main goals of your organization? How do you help people?
Sure. So London Blockchain Labs is the UK's largest blockchain student organisation. We're based across UCL, LSE, Imperial College London, and now partnered with London Business School as well. And our mission is to fill the blockchain talent gap. So to educate students, professionals, policymakers, and entrepreneurs on blockchain technology, what are its implementations, and how to work in the industry. So we teach people right from beginner level all the way through to blockchain developer, researcher, or business analyst level, depending on where they want to get to, and then support them in their career growth in the industry.
Is it only for students?
So while we're based at the universities and our main target audience is students, all of our free educational events are open to anyone, and we do usually have between 30 and 50% of our audience as people outside the university. So we generally try to engage along 3 key areas, I would say. So the first one, as you say, is meetups. We hold different kinds of events, all the way from social blockchain-focused drinks down at local pubs to speaker events, to panels and different things like that. Then the second level is online resources. So we have a database of online resources that people can go on and learn about different aspects of blockchain, because we make the presentations that we give on different things like crypto economics, smart contracts, specific platform deep dives available online for people to be able to learn in their time. And the third aspect is more kind of heavy duty engagement. So we host hackathons, conferences, and we have the BIDE conference coming up at Imperial College on March 23rd, which is hopefully going to be Europe's largest university-led blockchain conference.
But you help also to grow students like in different career ways and in the blockchain development, which is quite progressive, I think, considering the salary for the blockchain developers. So how does the whole structure work? What does it take to become a blockchain developer?
To give you a little bit of a backstory, where LBL came from, where the organization was founded, all of us, all 5 people who co-founded it, we were working in blockchain beforehand in different institutions, and we were working more on the research and business side. And the one thing that we were seeing is that a lot of blockchain firms were willing to pay a large amount of money for even the vague promise of some kind of blockchain related value, where that value often wasn't delivered. And this was for a number of factors, but the main factor we found was the lack of blockchain talent. So people who actually could develop these solutions, and who could also identify genuine business value from blockchain. And when we were founding LBL, we did a little bit of research on this. We did, first of all, a poll around the campuses of UCL and LSE to see what is the level of blockchain understanding. And of the 400 people that we polled, only 6 gave satisfactory answers to our questions about blockchain. So we felt that there was a real knowledge gap. And this was, contrasted with the demand from industry, where there are 14 job openings for every 1 blockchain developer, and where I think 65% roughly of CEOs, according to Deloitte, rank blockchain among their top 5 strategic priorities. So LBL is filling this market gap, and the way we're doing it is as follows. So we have a 4-step procedure that someone goes through from engaging with LBL. So if they're just starting out and they don't have the basics in place yet, we encourage them to attend our educational lectures, where we teach people from the ground up and give them a solid basic understanding of different platforms, different kinds of blockchains, public, private, and then kind of a primer on what it takes to become a smart contract developer. And then the people who devote more time to it and who are more interested at this point, we give them the opportunity to join our labs team. So our labs team at the moment consists of 15 developers, mainly masters and PhD students. So these are people with a background usually in computer science, or at least a very strong interest in coding, but not necessarily in blockchain. And when they have come in, what we help them to do is actually learn languages like Solidity and become smart contract developers. And the main platforms that we work with them in are Solidity, so Ethereum, Hyperledger Fabric, and IPFS. And the way that we allow them to develop their skills and actually engage with industry at the same time is by working with industry and academia. So we worked last year on a project with UCL academics, where our team of developers created a tokenized content distribution platform, which those academics are now actually turning into a startup. So it's a really exciting kind of hands-on approach, and it allows them to learn, but also to get industry skills, which will allow them to get an amazing job moving forward. And like you say, blockchain developer salaries are approaching $200,000 right now on average.
Exactly.
It's
I'm surprised Googling this information.
Yeah, it's a very in-demand field to be in.
What are the requirements for people in your selection process?
And the qualities that we look for, they vary team by team, but the one overarching thing that we look for is proactivity and genuine interest in the blockchain space. Because you can have very talented coders who are not necessarily, this is not really their passion, and they're only in it for maybe for CV purposes or whatever, and usually that comes through over the course of a behavioral interview. But maybe someone who has less experience in coding, or just is in first year of their computer science degree instead of their third year, but you can genuinely feel that they've devoted a lot of time to studying blockchain, and they can genuinely see the potential of this technology. And a person like this is exactly who we're looking for, because we know that they're going to put in the hours to really become the best they can be in terms of blockchain development and really make a difference in the industry, which is what our goal with this is.
You mentioned before that you are a non-profit. How do you find this financial support for you to make all these wonderful activities?
We engage, like I said, with universities and with companies, where our labs team of developers actually helps them on certain implementation projects. So for example, among our current partners, we've got Lisk, which is one of the top kind of blockchain platforms right now. They're also really focused on education, which is one of the reasons that we chose to partner with them. And also the Cardano Foundation, which the project of which is really cool. We're very supportive of the research-heavy approach that they're taking, and they're one of the leaders in the sense of actually investing in university-based labs to try and innovate on the technology.
So when is the next application date for the people to apply for the program?
Great question. So we're looking to probably take on some people actually at the end of this academic year, so around March time. But the main application cycle will be at the beginning of the next academic year. So we're looking at the beginning of October or end of September.
So March and October.
Yeah, that's it.
And it will be announced on the website and the main Facebook page.
Absolutely.
I know that your background, you're an economist, so you're an expert in the particular area. So how do you think the blockchain will change the economy?
I mean, it's a $1 trillion question. A lot of people will have heard of Bitcoin, but don't really understand kind of what's going on beyond that. So first of all, to differentiate between the technology and the crypto asset space. So obviously, crypto assets are one application of blockchain technology. So you can have, if you have a public blockchain platform which generates a cryptocurrency or crypto asset to stimulate certain behavior in the network, like for example, Bitcoin generates Bitcoins, Ethereum generates Ether, and you can have different types of tokens, security tokens, utility tokens, etc. But this is one kind of part of the ecosystem, and obviously there's a lot of developments right now with a switch from ICOs to STOs and increased regulation, which I think is good. It's going to hopefully help cut out the nefarious aspect of it. There's also been a lot of scams. People have lost a lot of money, and that's affected the impression of the blockchain ecosystem as a whole. But I think kind of moving beyond this is very important to focus on the different applications that we're finding right now, for example on the private blockchain side, and generally moving more towards enterprise applications. So in general, with any new technology, the main kind of drivers, especially if we're talking about early majority and kind of bridging that adoption gap to it becoming mainstream, is going to be driven where there's genuine economic value for businesses. And right now, even though it's perhaps offensive to so-called Bitcoin purists and blockchain purists who care only about public platforms, the concept of private blockchains or permissioned blockchains, where you have a limited number of users who have kind of increased access compared to other people, is where a lot of business applications lie. So for example, JP Morgan's Quorum platform or the Hyperledger consortium, which are developing platforms which are more suitable for use in areas like finance, interbank payment settlement, and other areas where not all information can be completely public. And I think this kind of speaks just to a more broad issue with blockchain right now, which is that there's been a lot of hype going on for many years now. There's been a lot of money invested. I think according to latest statistics, it's around 10 billion invested into blockchain projects last year. But there is still, both on this enterprise application side and in the ICO space, there is still a huge issue with lack of final product. So a lot of promise, but lack of final product and return on the investment that you're putting in. So with that in mind, what's really important is that blockchain is applied to problems where it's genuinely needed. And I think instead of being forced onto problems where it just sounds funky to use blockchain, you need to identify what are the genuine applications. So for an example would be Walmart and Tesco using blockchain to track their supply chains for different products, where you genuinely have a time save of, for example, going from 2 weeks to track a deficiency in a product chain to 2 seconds. So that kind of thing is a genuine value add. Also in shipping, for example, IBM working with Maersk, where they're saving months on certain procedural and supply chain elements in tracking how different products move around the world in these shipping chains. There's genuine value add there. But in many other projects, blockchain is just forced onto it, sometimes as an investment vehicle, sometimes as a reputational tool, but not really with a long-term strategy in mind, and also not really with the full buy-in of all the stakeholders of a company.
So if we speak about investing, you mentioned that it's worth to look at this like long-term perspective of the project and the value of the project which it carries for the society and so on and so forth. Are there any aspects which worth consideration in mind when you invest into something?
So I think, just to clarify any confusion, there's two types of investment, right? So there is, if I'm a firm, I can invest into a blockchain solution to solve one of the problems that I have. So for example, I can pay Amazon Web Services or IBM or Oracle, one of the people offering blockchain as a service right now, to build a blockchain platform for me. That would be an investment. And then another investment would be if I individually want to go in the crypto asset markets and buy a token. So if I start with the first one, the key criteria is kind of mentioning, but first of all, to make sure that you have a genuine problem that can genuinely be solved with blockchain, not with other solutions. And the second thing, to make sure that you have full stakeholder buy-in, so the whole company genuinely believes that this is the best way forward. They're fully bought in that blockchain is a solution that is genuinely going to drive value, and we're not just doing this for reputational purposes. And finally, to have a long-term strategy in place with clear KPIs and clear deadlines on when things need to be delivered, because as basic as this sounds, this hasn't actually been happening for the majority of blockchain projects. And then if we're looking on the other side, so investing in tokens, there are various frameworks out there which I really recommend having a look at. There are various government kind of regulatory bodies which have put out different frameworks for assessing the quality of a blockchain project. So previously ICO, now recently STO. First of all, to understand exactly what is the purpose of the token, and secondly, to understand kind of what are the criteria that you should be looking at for it moving forward, whether it has a long-term value. So some of the things that are particularly important to me are looking at the team in detail. So who are the people behind this project? Do they have...
In the case of tokens, you mean?
In the case of tokens, exactly, yeah. So are these people who have previous experience in the space? And if so, what is their track record? And are these people who genuinely believe, again, in what they're building and have a clear timeline moving forward? So not kind of promises of releasing the MVP in 5 years' time, maybe. But MVP within weeks or months, and a clear timeline of genuine improvements. Again, I keep using the word genuine, but it is a very key trend in the industry right now, that you get a lot of material which is kind of very fluffy and kind of glosses over certain elements, which mean that people get duped into believing that there's some kind of value there when maybe it might not be.
So have you ever invested yourself in any projects? In
2016, 2017, I dabbled in different projects like Estelle and Ethereum in particular. For me, what was really important at that time, and is important now if I do choose to invest again, is that I also personally believe in what this project is trying to achieve. So I genuinely believe in what Ethereum is trying to achieve in terms of building a global computer, as they call themselves, so, and the ability to build dApps on top of this platform. And I genuinely believe Stella's vision of kind of increasing financial inclusivity and making payments much more accessible than they are now.
So, but you picked like well-known choices, I would say. It's not like Qcoin, which no one's known.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I definitely wouldn't call myself an expert in the token field. So one of the things that LBL actually does, we have a markets team which is dedicated to analyzing different coins and different tokens. Whether you're on a Telegram channel, you guys should check it out. It's just called LBL Markets Channel on Telegram. and they analyze different kinds of coin on popular demand. So there's a poll every week where people put which coins they want to see analyzed, and the LBL team releases an in-depth technical and fundamental analysis of the token, including looking at all the different issues that I was mentioning before. So the team, the quality of the project, the timeline, etc.
And so any people can have the access toward this base and find out the information, which coins will be in demand, how it's going to work. And
absolutely right. So we don't give investment advice, but we do give people all the tools to make choices for themselves.
Usually regulations work differently in different countries. So in some countries blockchain is banned, in others it's a gray area like Russia, and if it's Europe it's more or less allowed. So what are your predictions for the next year regarding regulations? So what do you think?
Well, I think one thing that's important to note is, like, first of all, blockchain is a technology, so you can't really ban blockchain. Anyone can work with the technology whenever they want, especially now in the world of the internet, unless you very heavily regulate the internet like they do in China. What can be banned is easy access to crypto assets. So, for example, in China, there's a very strict regulations on any kind of access to crypto assets.
And it's not allowed, by the way, to discuss on different social networks about cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, exactly. So you can have restrictions on this kind of on this side of it. And again, I don't think these restrictions can be a complete blanket ban, because again, in the world of the internet, there are always ways of getting online, even past censorship and things like that. And actually, in terms of, I mean, probably ironic, but there's a blockchain solutions to this particular problem. So that the project that I was mentioning earlier that our labs team worked with UCL professors on, the content distribution platform, is a peer-to-peer content distribution platform where, let's say, a BBC News story gets distributed phone to phone without ever actually needing Wi-Fi or a satellite. So if you are living in a place where there is censorship on what kind of content you can view, a way around that would be to use this kind of peer-to-peer content transfer. But in terms of moving forward with regulation, I think there are different trends that we're seeing so in the US, in Europe, and in Asia. So in the US, there was a little bit of an issue of kind of regulation first, business later. So especially when everyone got very spooked by the whole kind of Bitcoin and Silk Road association back around 2013, 2014, when there was a lot of negative press around cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin in particular as it was being used by criminals. And then later on, is when people started making very large financial gains on Bitcoin as it started rising. One of the first things that the US did was introduce heavy taxation on any profits that you make from crypto asset trading, and that's meant that a lot of exchanges and a lot of blockchain operating companies, especially those focusing on crypto assets, have decided to move abroad, so focus their business in Europe or in Asia. Then in Asia, there was a slightly different approach, where at the beginning they were kind of business first, regulation later, and that allowed a lot of companies to flourish. So Japan, South Korea in particular, are really hubs of financial activity with regard to blockchain. And actually Japan even recognizes Bitcoin as an official currency. It's the first place to do so in the world. But then once a lot of, because that ecosystem developed so quickly, there became room for malicious activity, and now they've had to clamp down on it. And obviously in some places it's been more severe, like in China, than in others. But it's going to be about finding a balance between allowing businesses to flourish and having a shutdown on malicious activity. But then in Europe, we have kind of a nice balance at the moment in terms of this regulation and kind of allowing business to flourish aspect. Gibraltar actually became the first jurisdiction in the world to implement a DLT framework. So at the beginning of 2018, they implemented a full regulatory framework with 9 key steps that companies registered there must meet to be able to get a license to operate as a DLT company. And that has led to companies who want to get this official license to come to Gibraltar, and I think 3 or 4 companies have already received that license, so it's a big first. Then I think since then Malta, another kind of similarly sized jurisdiction, has also implemented a DLT regulatory framework. Apparently that one is a little bit less strict than the Gibraltar one, so that's led to some exchanges actually moving over from Asia into Malta as well. And in Switzerland, there was a landmark moment of Bitcoin ETFs being approved for the first time, which was kind of different to the approach that's being taken in the US, where the regulatory authorities are still requiring more work to be done before that can happen.
Yeah, quite optimistic, I would say.
Well, I mean, it's a gradual process. But what's good to see is that there is much more attention being paid to it now by regulators. So the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK, now has a specific task force dedicated to it, and they're investing a lot of time and resources into training their staff, into understanding the blockchain ecosystem more. They're releasing quite in-depth reports on the state of blockchain regulation and crypto asset regulation all around the world, and they're really getting kind of stuck into the process, which is good to see. And I think also there's the Treasury Select Committee focusing on blockchain as well, particularly with government implementation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for full answers. And
no worries at all.
Being with
My
us.
pleasure.